Am I audible to everyone? So I've got some doubt.
Yes, Rakesh.
Yeah, thanks. So if you look into the AWS data tier architecture, see, first two are same, client tier and application of the web tier, two tiers are the same. But if you talk about the data tier, there are different types of data tiers, different kinds of data tiers are there. So the first one is cache, data warehouse, time series, blob store, NoSQL, RDBMS, quantum ledger, and such. Different kinds are there in data tier. So these use it to satisfy different purposes, use it to serve the different purposes of the client or the end user or the application holder. So but in the earlier architecture, in the traditional architecture, there is only RDBMS, which has caused many problems for them to understand or to utilize 100% of its utilization or the servers or anything. So this has caused a problem.
What happened? Your voice is gone.
Yes, some network. Sorry. So am I audible right now?
Yeah, now better.
Let us go one on one. So what is NoSQL and what is cache? So we will go one on one. So NoSQL in the sense which is quite opposite to the SQL. SQL means structured query language. NoSQL means non-structured query language. So SQL will have a basically it has a structure by everything whatever there in the SQL, everything will be the table structure. So which is nothing but the rows and columns will be there. Whatever you store there, you have to put the same row and column for all the data. So that is there in a SQL. But in NoSQL, so which is different. So if you want to understand about the NoSQL, you must have the knowledge on a JSON structure. So Java simple object notification. So if you have the knowledge on JSON structure, so it will be easier to understand the NoSQL structure. So it here it is explaining about a key value store. Basically in JSON structure, so you will have a key value as an attributes. So when you search using the key, it will automatically show you the related JSON entire structure. So which reduces the latency because by using the key, so you are able to fetch the entire data. So basically there you are going to use the NoSQL query. So then why do we use cache? We use cache to read the same content number of times. So suppose you are having an application, so in that your user may call the same functionality again and again, which may give you the same result most of the time. So in those cases, every time you are calling to the database, so will result in losing the CPU utilization. So it will give you the more CPU utilization. There you may lose the new customers. So but if you put the cache there, so it is very much helpful to you. So to save the utilization of the database CPU. So for that purpose, we are using the cache service here. So data warehouse, why it is required? So to analyze the whatever there in your data or service provider database. So for that purpose, years and years of data and petabytes, exabytes of data you can store using this data warehouse. And on top of it, you can use the some BI tools to analyze. So how your business is going, where you're losing your business or where you're gaining, at what point, what structure you're gaining it. You can analyze that using your data warehouse. And blob store, you all know about the S3 storage and also as well as the logging, CloudWatch log, extra, etc. And about the Sage. So if we talk about the Sage, there is more to talk about it. We will discuss when we are discussing about the Elasticsearch, about the Sage. And database service we use for the complex queries. This is nothing but the SQL that we have already discussed. And quantum ledger. So if you talk about the quantum ledger, so you all talk about the blockchain. So you all hear about the blockchain technology. So if you want to implement some kind of blockchain technology, there you are going to use this quantum ledger as a database there. So which data cannot be tampered. So if you are having a requirement to fulfill your data not to be tampered everywhere, so then in that case you are going to use the quantum ledger database. So time series database is also there. So when you use the IoT, every 1 second it has to send the data to the database. So which is nothing but the results in the front end of the client's web application. So there, this time series of database uses there. This is the workload driven data store selection. So in this way, AWS has divided not only AWS but our advanced technologies has divided this database tier into the different things. They have divided based on the purpose. So now let us see what are the different types of services are available on AWS to fulfill all these purposes. So let us see all the services one on one. If you talk about heart rates, so if you want to fetch the same data again and again, so you can make use of Amazon Elastic Cache. So this service is available. So if you want to look at the analytics, so then you can go with the Amazon Redshift. So if you want to check the time series database, store the time series data. So you can make use of Amazon time stream. So for logging and everything, you can make use of S3 and also CloudWatch logs. You can make use there. For NoSQL, DynamoDB, Neptune, DocumentDB, so this is available. Amazon RDS for the RDBMS queries and Quantum Ledger database for untampered data, Elasticsearch for research. So these are the different database services under our data type. So which are participating to all the customers. Let's go one on one. So first one is the RDS. We'll discuss about RDS more. So what is the RDS? So RDS is a relational database which is used to provide to serve structured query language related databases. So those databases are nothing but Amazon Aura, MySQL, PostgreSQL, MariaDB, SQL Server, and Oracle database. So these are the 6 different types of engines. Those are available under our RDS service. So what is the benefit of using this RDS service? So these are the benefits of using RDS service. So which is very easy to administer and very easy to will get the more performance and more scalability. Availability is more and durability of the data is also more. So it is secure and it is following some compliances like SOC 1, 2 and HIPAA compliance. So these kinds of compliances it also providing by default. So if you want to make use of those compliance for your own system or on premise, so this costs a lot. So when we talk to the customers, we will tell mostly about these things only, because if you want to fetch these kinds of compliances to their databases or to their customer data, they have to follow all these compliances levels, SOC 1, SOC 2, or HIPAA compliance. So whatever compliance are there, they must and should follow. But in AWS, by default, we will get them freely. So let us compare what is the difference between organized databases and what benefit that we are getting out of this RDS. You all, as you are all are AWS engineers, you're already aware of this, but I like to put more stress here to understand, to remind you once more. So these are different types of works that we have to undergo when we host one database on premise. So suppose we come from bottom to top. So first one, power and internet is required, and racks are required, stacks are required, and then server maintenance someone has to do, and OS installations, patches, and software installations, patches, backups, availability scaling, and optimization. All these things that the customer has to manage in his premises only. So if he wants to manage all these in his company or in his premises, then what happens? So automatically it will increase the capital amount or the cost or the budget to the customer. So which ultimately loses to the results in a high capital amount to invest there in their company. So if we remove one-on-one and one-on-one, one step, then customer may get benefit out of it without putting any effort there from their end. So there is no need to put any of the employee to reach OS patches or the installation, server maintenance, all these things, and the networking. So as we are very much similar to the EC2 instances. So if we host your databases in Amazon EC2, so what kind of benefits that you get here? So you don't need to do power setup and internet setup, rack setup, server maintenance, OS installations, that you don't need to do there. So automatically, if you select the Amazon EC2 as a service, it automatically installs you everything. You will get an instance. So after set of amount of time, so then you are able to connect to it, and you can do anything after that one. So, but on top of it, you may need to install the database engines. So if you want to maintain some MySQL or SQL or Oracle, so whatever be the database, so you may need to install there on a EC2. But let us say after EC2, if you take an RDS as a service, if you want to get benefits from the RDS service, so let us see. So what are the benefits that RDS is going to provide us? So if you take the left side and compare the left side values and the right side values, these are the different types of benefits that the customer get benefited from all these, like all these points. So then database software installations is not required, patches are not required, database backups automatic, we can take using the RDS, and high availability is also there. They want to put the high availability on-premise. You have to create a two servers on a different places. So which automatically leads to the different highest amount of capital investment is required for that. So scaling is there. So everything that you get benefited from RDS. So these are the different types of benefits that we get from this one. So we can say these are the different features here. And read replicas we will get for every instance. We'll get a minimum three instances as a backend asynchronous replication database for durability, data durability. So, and if you want to use the read replicas, you can make you can increase the read capacity of your database, and the provision database input throughput is there, say availability, and all these things that we can that we get benefited using the RDS database service. So as we are an AWS engineers, so we have to talk more about the Amazon Aurora database. So why we need to talk about Amazon Aurora database in the sense? So the first point is it is 6 times faster than MySQL database, normal MySQL engine. So Amazon Aurora is faster and 3 times faster than the PostgreSQL. So suppose there are 100 queries are there. So if you want to run the 100 queries on a MySQL database, let us assume that if it is taking the 100 seconds of time. So, but that Amazon Aurora will reduce that one third, that will take one third of the total 100 seconds. So that case, so your has been saved. So which ultimately gives you and more more scaling, more performance that it will provide to customer. So this is the main one, that main reason. And also, if you take any other databases like MySQL or Oracle, so that will give you that AWS maintains 3 replicas behind every of instance for the data durability. If one replica goes down, so it will automatically make master the other one. If the second one also goes down, it will make the third one as the master one. So automatically it will modify the whatever the databases, whatever the replicas are down, and automatically it will make them up and running. So every time it will maintain a 3 replicas of the same database without charging you anything. But while coming to the Amazon Aurora, it maintains the 6 copies of the same instance. So which means in every region, minimum there are 3 different availability zones are available. So minimum in India also there are 3 different availability zones are there, and the third one is recently added 6-7 months ago. So in every availability zone, it will maintain 2 copies of the same database, 2 copies of the master database it will provide you. And also, if you talk about the read replicas, the remaining other database, we can only create a minimum one. But here we can create a 15 read replicas for a single database. So for other database, I guess it's a maximum count of 5 read replicas are available for the other database engines. But if you talk about Amazon Aurora, 15 read replicas are available. And also, if you take an other databases as an example, there you cannot create a global tables. So every database can be created from the region only, from the region side only. But for this Amazon Aurora, you can create a global database. So where we can use this global database in the sense. So suppose your customers are across the world. In India, you may have the 50% of your customers, or in US, you may have some of the 30%. In UK, some of the 20% of your customers are there. So in that case, if you host one database in India, so there will be latency for the UK customers and US customers. So in that case, we can make use of this Amazon Aurora global tables. There, it will be hosted three different copies in UK. So one in UK, one in US, one in India. So whatever the customers that they contact the particular applications, the related queries will go to the Indian customer request will go to the Indian database, like US to US customers to US databases and UK customers to the UK databases. Only that choice is only available for us in Amazon Aurora. So these are the different types of benefits that we can get from this Amazon Aurora. So these are the different kinds of statistics in terms of write performance and read performance when we compare with MySQL and PostgreSQL. For MySQL, and this is the write performance. So Amazon Aurora is the orange one and blue one is the MySQL. So write performance that you will get this much, and this is the difference between MySQL and Amazon Aurora. So you have 2 lakh I hope so difference is there. So and also read performance, this much difference is there. So this is MySQL statistics when we compare with Aurora. So in the same way, we will get some statistics for the PostgreSQL performance as well. So in the initial, we have discussed this about MySQL, Amazon Aurora MySQL is 6 times faster than the normal MySQL, and PostgreSQL is 3 times faster than the normal PostgreSQL. So these are the different statistics. Based on statistics, Amazon is giving that kind of sentences to us, to their customers, and it is true. From where we have come from, that what kind of benefits that we have given from starting to now. So on premise, there we have to do all these things, and if you take an EC2, then all these things will be handled by AWS, and the blue ones are handled by the customer. And here orange ones are handled by the AWS itself. There is no need to do anything else. Just you can create an RDS instance there, and you can create, you can make use of it. No need to maintain the database backup, OS patches or installations, and nothing you have to do. And if you talk about the storage in Amazon Aurora, you can make use of auto incremented storage. And for other databases, also recently AWS has added auto increments in a 10 GB units. So you can put a minimum amount of data there, minimum amount of storage. Suppose 20 GB is the minimum one, and 64 TB is the maximum one. So only SQL database is having the 16 TB as a maximum data storage which is available on AWS. But for all the 5 other engines, 64 TB of data storage is available by default. So Amazon multi-master. So this is nothing but the worldwide. So across your data centers or across the world. So if you want to use there, so you can create a multi-master. So where everyone will access its own master, and behind the databases, they synchronize the data synchronously. So whatever that is available in database, automatically it will be synchronized to the database 2 and database 3. So and vice versa for the database 2 and database 3. So these are the different types of benefits which are available under RDS. So after this one, so we have to talk more about the serverless here. So why the serverless become the main one, or the main or main technology nowadays? If you take an example of Lambda, so when we compare to EC2, why Lambda has become that much famous when we compare to normal ones or EC2? So because there the cost is less. So why the cost is less there? So because we are not using 100% or the 24/7 hours, we are not using that EC2 every time. So whenever there is a request from the customer to your website, so that time only we are invoking a particular Lambda function. So that Lambda function may get executed for 3 seconds, 4 seconds, or the 10 seconds, or the 1 minute. So it depends on the functionality of the customer. So it will charge you for those 10 seconds. Let us assume it has executed for only 10 seconds. So, and it only charges you for those 10 seconds. So not for the 24 by 7. So for that purpose, so it has saved so much of cost. So that is the reason why most of the clients are now turning towards the serverless and Lambda functions. So most of our clients have migrated from this traditional EC2 ones to the Lambda functions, and they're migrating or they're re-architecting their entire websites towards the serverless and microservices. So in the same way, if you talk about the serverless database, so let us assume if it is serverless for an application, so there is a small code snippet, is there something hello world in Python, it is there. If you want to execute that one, then you no need to do anything there. So there will be some pre-installed Python containers will be there in that. This hello world will get executed and it will give you the response, or vice versa for the for all other activities or all other functionalities. But if you talk about the databases, so database serverless is very difficult one, because there you need to install the softwares there. You need to install database software and you need to maintain the patches as well. And what are the activities that we are doing or the RDS is doing for us? All those activities that has to be done only when some customer is invoking that functionality. So whenever the customer invokes the functionality, this Aurora serverless automatically starts a database that which you have configured earlier. It will start the database automatically, and how much time that particular query has taken, and it will only charge you for that particular amount of time. So let us take an example of database, so which is running 24 by 7. If you reduce that one only whenever the customer is invoking, let us assume that only customer invokes 1 hour in the day or 1 hour in the night. So only there will be 2 hours. So it will charge you 7 into 2, only 14 hours. So 24 into 7, when you compare this 14 hours, it is very less. So in that way, you can make use of this Aurora serverless as well. And these are the different statistics of Aurora when we compare with other databases. And so we'll do the RDS lab now, and afterwards we'll discuss other databases as well. So before that, I would like to show you the two different architectures here. The first one is, so this is with the read replicas architecture. So when you talk about the read replicas, there will be asynchronous replication from the RDS master to RDS read replica. So read replica is only used for the read purposes. Whenever there is a read queries, customer may get used, this may get benefit out of this reader endpoint. And whenever there is a writer tools are there, so you can use this one. So in the same way, you have for the high availability, if you want to use the high availability in a different ages, then that architecture will looks like this. So if you check this DNS lookup is there. When we create an RDS instance, there is a point that RDS is going to provide to their customers, so to their users. So in the backend, if you configured RDS to have multi-AZ database, which means to have the high availability, to have the zero downtime there, so you can use this high availability concept in RDS. So what happens if you make use of high availability concept there in RDS? So whenever you create an RDS instance, you will get an endpoint. So, but behind with the configuration of multi-AZ, so there will AWS will automatically launch a second master, which automatically in a synchronous replication to the first one. So this will be the synchronous replication. So when the first one got down, so suppose let us assume the first master database got down. So it will automatically change the DNS lookup or DNS record inside this DNS lookup, inside this endpoint. So automatically it will point this one to the second database. So which is called as standby connection. So this is called as a blue-green kind of environment also that we can call it. So in this way, AWS is maintaining here. So there will be an endpoint. Automatically, AWS will change the record. If the primary one goes down, it will change the record to the second one. And whenever the first one, primary one comes to up, whenever the primary one ups, So then automatically it will change the record to the primary one. So these are the two different types of architectures. One is with the read replica and one is with the available high availability. And please let me know if you have any questions. So we'll discuss before going to the lab. So otherwise we'll go to lab session and we'll do create one RDS instance there. Are we going to go to lab? Do you have any questions? I hope where to go. I'll just open my AWS account. Please give me a moment. Meanwhile, if you were having any question regarding this RDS or the any concept, please do ask so that I can explain you. Please let me know if you are able to see my screen.
We are able to see your screen, Rakesh.
Thank you. So let us go to RDS. In order to get connect with this RDS instance, we're going to create one MySQL instance here, and we'll do some basic queries in that. In order to get connect with the RDS instance, you have to MySQL client you should have on your machine. If you're using one, some other database like PostgreSQL or MS or any other database, you may need to have the relay to client application to get connectivity. So I'm trying to create a database here. So we'll go with the standard options to check there. So after getting into the screen, you will see different types of database engines here. So we'll go to the MySQL. Based on the requirement, you can select any of these databases. So you can choose the version here. We'll check the stable versions, and you can select the type of the resource, whether it's related to the production or dev or test environment or anything. So in order to save the cost, I'm using the entire database here. So what is the database identifier? So this is nothing but the name of your database. And can give credentials here, database credentials. So let it be admin. So and we'll give the password. We have a strong password. For testing purpose, I'm using the normal one. Gives you the more security. So by default, when you select the free tier, it will select T2 Micro only. That is, as we have 750 hours of free for this T2 Micro instance. So we can select from 20 GB to 16 TB of data with the auto scaling of the storage option. So we have discussed about the storage auto scaling. So if you select this one, it will automatically increase your database storage in 10 GB increments. Suppose we have given here 20 GB as an initial configuration. If it reaches to near 20 GB, automatically it will add another 10 GB to your database storage. So if you check on this option, then only it will be helpful and it will do that one. Otherwise, it won't do. And I make it as 100 GB only as a maximum during the scaling. So if you want to get benefited for the multi-AZ deployment, so you can make it for this one. In free tier, you won't get this, but in production and dev and test, you will get this option as well. So I'm taking the default VPC here. So if you want to create the new one, you can create from here itself. So which will automatically route a place to VPC service. And security group. So I'm also using the security group, subnet group as a default one, and also security group as a default one. So everything I'm here, I'm using the default ones only. But if you're launching it to the customer, or if you're launching it to your production or anything, so you do not use this what we call normal ones. So default ones, no, you should not use, because by default all the ports will be open there. So for security reasons, it is always the best practice to create a new VPC, a new subnet group, new security group. Why? Because when you create on yourself, so by default everything will get blocked. So AWS will block everything unless you open yourself. And also the option is publicly accessible. So do you need your database to be accessible publicly or only to available in your private networks? So this is for testing. I am checking yes. I need this database to be available publicly. And default security group is already selected and port 3306. And there is some additional configuration is there. If you want to change any of the server's configuration or MySQL configuration, so you can use this parameter group or the options group to change the database parameters. So by default, MySQL will provide you some default values there. If you want to change according to your requirement or your application's requirement, you can create a different parameter group there, and you can use of your own parameter groups. So enable automatic backups are there. So the maximum retention period for the backups is 35 days. So by default, 7 days will be there. After 35 days, it will automatically get deleted. Configure for 35 days. As it is 7 days as default, I am leaving it as is. After 7 days, it will delete the backups. And automatically it will create the new backups as well. So it is a continuous process. And if you want to enable the enhanced monitoring, so those metrics you will get some more. So inside the CPU thread and core related monitoring metrics, that you will get benefited using this option. If you configure this option, then you will get those things. If one of your customer has asked you to core related metrics as well, so then you may need to enable this kind of monitoring. And error logs, slow query logs, whatever the query execution or the errors in the query execution. So you can make use of this one. So this will store the logs in Amazon CloudWatch. So there you can go and see. So if something happens in your system, you can go and may analyze using the data. So this is about the upgradation of your OS as well as patches. So AWS will always do only the minor upgrades. So let us see what is minor and major upgrades. So if you see, initially we have selected the database engine version. After selection of MySQL, yeah, here we have the versions are there. 5.7, 8, and different versions are there. So if you talk about minor versions, so whatever there comes under 5.6 and 5.7. So all those are called as minor versions. But suddenly it goes to the 8. So there is a major increase. So there is a major functionality changes. So AWS won't perform major upgrades automatically. It will only perform minor upgradations. So suppose let us assume you have migration work from Azure, Microsoft Azure. So which is database version is 5.6, let us assume. So here if the customer is wanting us to create MySQL version, so it is highly impossible without doing anything. So you can only do the minor upgradations. You want to do the major upgradations to A, you need to have a migration service in between. So unless you have the migration service, so you cannot convert, or the AWS cannot convert the data from different versions in between the major versions. So that is the purpose of this one here. And for the maintenance window, you can select a particular time. Suppose if the customer is asking for you, I don't want any downtime in the daytimes or weekdays. I only can have the downtime only the weekend or Sunday or in the midnight. So if that is the case, you have to use this maintenance window, and in the select window, you can select the different day and time and seconds. So and what will be the duration that you need in between. So all those you can select here only in that particular time frame. AWS will upgrade the database or will update patches, or based on your configuration it will do whatever the setup or whatever the configuration that you do for it. So if you take a no preference, it will choose its feasible time, and it will do on its own choice. So for all the customer related database, enable this deletion protection that will help for anyone not to delete by mistake. So these are the different options which are available here. So this will take quite a amount of time. So this will take some 2-3 minutes of time. If you're having any questions regarding this creation, please do let me know. So meanwhile, I can show you again by opening a form for the creation database. Meanwhile, let us open MySQL Workbench. MySQL Workbench is a most repeated client to get connect with the MySQL. You can also use the other clients as well. So it is so whatever is feasible for you that you can make use of. Yeah, when we talk about Aurora serverless, so we have discussed many things there. So in my account, there is one other database is there with the MySQL. So which is being used for one other application. So if you check the CPU utilization there, it is very less. It is only 1.83%. So which means 99.17 or 98.17 percentage is being wasted under this database. So of course we have taken the T2 micro, so which is the minimum and the least one which is available under this database under this RDS service. So there, so let us assume this database is costing us $100. So let us assume that. So in that only we are consuming 1.83%. So which means really we are only consuming $1.83 worth CPU only. So but we are wasting $98.17 there. So without any use. So there is no use of so having this one. So in these cases, so if you're having these kind of cases, you can make use of serverless. So there you can only pay, you only need to pay $1.83 if you assume $100 as the whole cost. So because whenever there is a requirement, whenever there is a customer invocation particular database, it will only start the database on that particular time. So remaining times it will be in a stop state. So automatically it saves your cost. So but it will charge you same for the storage. So because 10 GB, 20 GB, whatever the storage that you configure there, it will charge you for that. Is getting started and so after clicking on the created database, so here it is in the backing up stage, which means it is created and AWS is taking an initial backup. So why it is taking initial backup in the sense whatever the configuration that you did all got saved so in a snapshot. So if you lost this database after immediate creation, if you don't want to put all the configuration again, so you can take this backup immediately and you can create another one. So this is the endpoint which I have. So let us copy this one, and here you can get the information related to connectivity and security and where it is hosted, which is hosted in 1B availability zone, VPC network, public accessibility. Yes, let us refresh again. So let us check the state. So you want the configuration. So you will get this name and engine version, the core and RAM, minimum amount of storage, mainly about the username. Password you won't get the console, but you need to get whoever is created. You need to get the password from that person. So, but if you have an or this RDS, you can modify the password by here and yes, database is created. So it is better to modify the password if you forget the password any of your applications. So in modification, we'll get all the once again. So based on your requirement, you can give the new master password here. So as we get that point here, I copy the endpoint. Let us go to MySQL Workbench there. This is the MySQL Workbench looks like. So after opening this screen, you will see some plus option here. You want to get connected to your database. You need to click that database. Let us give some name to identify it, and host name as your endpoint, whatever the endpoint that you have copied from the screen. So if you give the default one as a port one, which will be the 3306, is the standard port for MySQL. So if you have configured the 3306 only on the screen, so while you're creating database, you can put same, or if you have changed it there, you should also change here. And what is the username? Username is admin, as we gave the default one, and the password. Let us test the connection. Yes, it is successful. Just click on OK. Yes, I'm able to connect this database. If you are while connecting to database using any of the MySQL client, if you fail to get connected to this one, so first thing you have to check in your security groups whether 3306 port is opened up to your particular IP or not. So that is the first one you need to troubleshoot. The second one is password is correct or not. Third one is whether it is publicly accessible or not if you're trying to do it from public. So if you're trying to do it from a VPC, check whether the port is opened or not and whether the password is correct or not. These three are the troubleshooting points when you fail to connect to the created databases. So let us execute very basic queries, and we'll go to the other section. These are the different types of database available, and use MySQL. So I'm using MySQL database here, and I will show some tables. So these are the different types of tables which are available under the default database. So this is some basic usage. So, but if you have the requirement to do all these things, you may have to follow these steps everywhere. So let us move to the other concept in this section. But after the creation for the testing, if you are using any of the R&D account from the Minfi side, please remember that after usage, you need to remove or you need to delete, terminate the resource, whatever that you have created. So I will also do the same thing. Give me a moment. I'm sharing my screen for the next one. Let us discuss about the DynamoDB. So we have already discussed in the initial slide. So which is solving a purpose, customer purpose. So if the customer is having any purpose of storing the NoSQL database, like key value storage or the JSON structures, so then they can make you this is Amazon DynamoDB. So what are all the different types of benefits the customer get from using this Amazon DynamoDB is, so they will have the seamless scalability and whatever they are present on my screen, all these types of benefits that they get out of this DynamoDB. So there is no administration required, similar to the RDS only, and no SQL related database, single digit millisecond latency. So this is the main one that most of the customers are using this DynamoDB only because of single digit millisecond latency. And this is also available as a multi-master, or the global tables are also available in DynamoDB, and the multi-region is also available here. As this database, DynamoDB database is a serverless one. So serverless in the sense, so in AWS there are totally two different kinds of services are available. So one is AWS managed services. So this DynamoDB comes under AWS managed services, and the second one is customer managed services. Those are nothing but EC2 and whatever other services that which are under those things. So those are RDS is also comes under customer managed services. And but DynamoDB, S3, and and few other like Elasticsearch. So all these are managed by AWS only. So you no need to do anything. You no need to start the server. You no need to take the backup. No need to scale, or no need to make the table highly available. So all these things are managed by AWS behind you. So and is also secure. It gives you the high availability, and so we'll get the three availability zone replication. So similar to the normal RDS, MySQL, and PostgreSQL databases and MS SQL databases, similar to them. So it also stores as three replications across three available zones. In AWS, every region will consist minimum of three availability zones. So for this DynamoDB also, this one copy, so there will be for one a single table, there will be three different types of copies will be available across the availability zones. So which automatically gives the durability, increases the durability of the customer data. So that types of so those are the different types of benefits that we get benefited from the this DynamoDB. So there is nothing specific to talk about this DynamoDB. So but if you know about the JSON structure, so it uses the JSON structure only. So whatever there in DynamoDB as a data, as a item, that uses the JSON structure. So JavaScript object notation. So JSON, which means, so in this on demand is there, and one other provision capacity is also there. So in the same way that how we are using EC2 as an on-demand and reserve capacity, so this provision and on-demand will be compared like that, but there is no cost difference. So there will not be that 70% and 80% of cost difference like EC2 reserved and on-demand instances. So on-demand instances in the sense, whenever you have a request coming to your DynamoDB, so automatically it will scale the number of IOPS which are allocated for the table and the service. So in the same way, it will also provide you high availability. So when something goes down, some data goes down in the AWS data center, it will automatically get the data from other availability zone or other data center, or If you configure for the global table, it will also fetch your data from other region as well. So in the DynamoDB itself, a millisecond latency. So millisecond is very less. So this kind of DynamoDB or these kind of NoSQL databases are mainly used in the gaming applications. So which means, so in the gaming applications, let us take in PUBG as an example. So PUBG, so nowadays most of the users are playing the PUBG only all the time. So in that time, so what happens when the every user logs in, it has to fetch the user related information. So what is his stars, so how much score that he scored for the last 10 or 20, or what is his rank, or what is doing, and what are all his friends. So that all the information it has to fetch whenever the customer logs in, whenever the player logs into PUBG account. So it has to fetch all this information. Let us assume there is a 1 lakh users playing concurrently. So at that time, so if the database is not, uh, there will be more delay. So when the dear make use of this is very much fast when we come to the hardware or in the database. So this second mostly objects. So that is the main purpose. So to execute your queries with very much fast, with low latency, so you can make use of this DynamoDB. If having customers less than a millisecond latency, you can make use of the concept called as DynamoDB accelerator. So which is basically 1/10th time that it takes to execute a query with a DynamoDB accelerator. So let us assume if DynamoDB is taking 1 second, this DynamoDB accelerator will only take 1/10th second to execute the same query. So that is the feature that we have in DynamoDB accelerator. We have auto scaling, and let us see some basic differences between SQL and NoSQL. So where do we need to use it, and when we need to use this database, NoSQL database compared to the SQL one. So first we'll check the right one. So if you need joins, you're having RDBMS knowledge, you will get to know joins, transactions, and table scans, all these things. If you having a requirement to execute a query using the joins concept, to execute a query among the tables, or among do the transaction among the tables, or do the frequent table scans, so then you may need to go for the RDS database. Or to execute the complex queries, so you can go for RDS database only. But if you want to maintain your database as simple as possible, and as to maintain your data with untampered, and to maintain the integrity of your data, and to get the data with millisecond latency, so you can make use of this Amazon DynamoDB. And if you want to make use of your data or to store your data, so then in a JSON format, you can automatically go to the DynamoDB. And similar to the DynamoDB, we have other databases also available, which is nothing but a document DB, which replicates a MongoDB outside. So these are the two purposes that it serves SQL and MySQL, NoSQL. So let us do one lab related to the DynamoDB. So if you do not understand what is NoSQL really, so while we're doing or executing this lab, we will get to know so what is DynamoDB really there. So I will go to my AWS account and I'll share my screen again. Guys, if you're having any question related to anything, please do let me know. As you all are AWS engineers, I assume you already know about these concepts. But if you miss anything, then please do let me know. I'll try to explain my best. I hope my screen is visible to everyone. So I'm on the screen of DynamoDB service in an AWS account. So in order to make use of this DynamoDB, first of all, you need to have some programming knowledge. So in the same way, like how you're getting connected to RDS instance through the programming. So you can also connect this DynamoDB from the program itself. And you can do some kind of testing if you want to do, or if you want to implement some kind of testing on a DynamoDB. So you can directly go to the console and you can do some kind of actions here. So in MySQL, so I have different types of tables in my account. I'll try to create one table. So please let me know if you are not able to see my screen. So I'm assuming it's visible to everyone. So here we'll get a concept of primary key and sort key. So basically in database, in RDS, so if you want to create a table, so there if you want to maintain a uniqueness for each row inside the table, so you will make use of primary key there. So primary key and foreign key concepts, so that you will get from there. So basically the people who came from CS background will have this RDBMS related data information. So the other people, so it may be difficult for you to understand these things. In the same way, here also in DynamoDB, we will have two types of unique keys. So one is a partition key and the second one is a sort key. So if you want to maintain unique data using the two attributes inside the JSON structure, then you need to choose for the second one as well. So if you do not want to maintain a two attributes uniqueness, you can make use of the partition key itself. Suppose which is a user table, let us assume which can be which is in a user table. I'll take email ID as a partition key, so which means this is the unique one which will not be duplicated if someone tries to add something here as well. So duplication will not be there. So let all the default settings be there. I've created a table. Table will look like this. It is being created. Yes, it is created. You can check the time. You can compare the time as well. Want to create a database, how much time it has taken. So for the DynamoDB table, how much time that it took. So you can check all these things here. And the primary partition key is email ID, that which will here right now. Sort key we do not give anything and it is empty. So here you will get the data, whatever the data that is present inside the Dynamo table, you will get here. So in RDS database, there are four different types of operations will be there. So they are simply called as CRUD operations. In the software field, they are simply called as CRUD operations. So CRUD in the sense, create, read, update, and delete. Create, read, update, and delete. Those four operations are simply called as CRUD operations. So if you have a requirement for the CRUD operations, then you have to choose the RDS database compared to the NoSQL ones. But in the same way, here also we have three different types of options is available. One is to insert and second one is to scan and query. So we will have two different types of commands to read the data from the DynamoDB table. So first one, let us create one item inside that one. So I told you need to have some basic knowledge on JSON structure. So JSON structure will look like this. I'm zooming my screen. So JSON structure will look like this. Most of you know because you were using AWS one. Everything you will get from JSON structure only. So let us fill the email ID. I'll put my email ID here. See, in RDLs, if you create a table, you have to give all the column names, which is the email ID, name, phone number, everything you have to put for all the data that which you insert into the database. But here you no need to have all those things. So as we gave the primary key here, this key here, so email ID is must and should for all the data that which you put inside this DynamoDB table. But for remaining all attributes or depends on your requirement, depends on your use case. For one customer, I'd like to add something name. I'll take so name something, something like this. So basically, the left side one and right side one we'll call it as attributes, and left side one are called as keys, and right side one as are called as values. So that is why it is called as key value pair. This is called as key value pair. That is why it is called as key value pair database. Key value store database. NoSQL is called as like this. And I put the company as well. So I have given the 3 attributes, and we'll also create one other item here. So similarly, we'll put some dummy account, and let us add some different fields now. I have added different fields, but the email ID is the same attribute, same key name. But phone number and city, those are not in the first item that we have inserted, but here we have. So different types of columns that we get. So if you add a different item with a different column name, that will also get the different name on the top that we get. So you are seeing here 3 different ones and with the different column names. So the first one is having the city and phone number, second one is having the company name, third one, so second one is having the job role only. So these are the different types of items that we have inserted. Let us try to do a query here. So what is the partition key? Partition key is email ID. So let us do a query where partition key, which means email ID is equal to rakeshkumar.t@minfitech.com. Let us start searching on it. See, you have got this data. So what we gave email ID where the email ID is rakeshkumar.t@minfitech.com. Give that as a response. So we told that, and it has given like this. And similarly, we will run see it vc.com one other. So we have got the different data when compared with that. So in this way, so this much low latency, it helps us to increase the performance of our applications. So this is about the DynamoDB. And we have different other concepts here, but it will take a lot of time. So let us move to the next one. So before going to that one, please do let me know if you're having any question regarding anything that we have discussed till now. And we'll go with the Redis and then Elasticsearch. Then we'll wind up this session. Before I'm assuming 7, now it's 7:18. So before 7:30 or 7:40, so we'll be able to wind this session up. So I have completed DynamoDB lab. So now we'll move to the Elasticache section. We have already discussed why we need to use Elasticache and in which situation or in which purpose we need to use this Elasticache. So as we discussed earlier, if we need to get the data on a frequent basis, suppose if you are fetching a data which relates to, suppose now only we have fetched one data in the DynamoDB table, email ID equal to abc.abc@abc.com something. So if that user is logging always, and if you have a requirement to refresh your website every time, so in that cases, you no need to go to database every time to consume the database CPU. So where you can put the cache service in between. So automatically we will route the request to get into this cache server first. So we will tell that cache server, if you have the data, please give me. So otherwise, the request will go to the database. So it will, if the data is available in cache, it will automatically fetch that one and it will show you in the front end or in the service. If the data is not available, it will go and fetch the data from the database itself. So which is very simple to understand this concept. So I would like to relate this concept with the CloudFront concept. So how the content delivery network CloudFront is working in behind. So in the same way, Elasticache is also working. So suppose let us assume you have created a distribution in the CloudFront. So after creation of CloudFront, so whatever that you put as a service there, so suppose you have given one S3 bucket to host your website and you have configured that in your cloud CDN distribution, this CloudFront distribution. So what it will do is when a customer invokes this CloudFront endpoint, if that is available in edge data centers, if that data is available in edge data centers, the request will be served from edge centers only. If the request is not available in edge data center, then the request will be routed to S3 and CloudFront will take the S3 response. Then that response will be given to the user. So all this transaction, assume in your mind, suppose a user one is there, he's trying to fetch the content from the CloudFront. So there is a one-in-one contact. So he's directly connecting to CloudFront and CloudFront is giving the response to the user one. So this is okay, this is low latency. But here, if the content is not available in CloudFront, then the request is going from the CloudFront to Amazon S3 and it is taking the response of Amazon S3 to the CloudFront. So which means there is a second person comes in picture. So automatically one request is doubled. So one becomes 2 here. So 1 second becomes 2 seconds. So automatically delay get increases. So in that way, cache helps us to reduce the latency in fetching the results. So in the same way, so using the CloudFront, we will deliver the static content there. But when we come to application services, any of our application or any of the websites. So most of the application uses the dynamic data. So in those cases also, we can make use of this Elastic Cache for the dynamic contents as well. So for the dynamic content, they put the TTL attribute. So time to live attribute. So this Elastic Cache is also works in the JSON structure only. So let us move further to understand this one. So if you take an Amazon Elastic Cache, so it will give you extreme performance and fully managed, easily scalable. This also we can call as an AWS managed service. So this is one of the example architecture. So when we put cache service before the RDS database. So we have discussed in DynamoDB, we have discussed about the millisecond latency, but here milliseconds becomes the microseconds. So nowadays, entire industry is moving towards the low latency systems. So that's why milliseconds is the new microseconds is the definition here. So when you use the cache in between the database, if the database is executing the same query for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, the same one will be executed within 1 second using this cache service. So that is the purpose. To increase the performance of your application, we need to use this cache service. So this is one of the example architecture that we have. So we're having RDS DB primary is there and standby is there. So multi-agent deployment is there. So in between to the application server. So if you check, it is a 3-tier architecture. Web server is there, application server is there, database server is also there. But before the database tier, there are one other tier is presented, which is nothing but the cache. So what happens here in the sense, whenever there is a request comes to the web server, it passes to the application server, then it will check whether the particular request is available in this cache servers or not. If the particular data is not available in this cache servers, then the request will be passed to RDS DB primary instance. It will take the response and it will store that in a cache. And again, so one other question is there, how much time that the data will get stored in a cache? So that also depends on the configuration of the user. So user in the sense, administrator, AWS engineer. So based on the configuration from the AWS engineer, this will make live for that amount of time. So that concept is called as time to live. So TTL, basically in a short form, it is called as TTL. So TTL is nothing but the time to live. So which means when you are putting a data into this cache, you are telling that machine to keep the data for this amount of time. Let us assume if the data to be stored for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, you will configure while inserting that data into the cache server. Okay, keep this data for 5 seconds. After 5 seconds, delete this data. So you will give that configuration to the server. So after 5 seconds, what it will do, it will get a request again and it will go to the database and take the response and store and serve for next 5 seconds. So in that way, this cache service is helpful to the customer to reduce the latency and to maintain a microsecond latency in every call. So in which sectors that we have used this Elastic Cache, and we will use this Elastic Cache here. So mainly in the gaming leaderboards. So in the gaming applications, we can use this cache to provide more performance and low latency to the customers. So we can use this and financial trading. So if you check the values for the Nifty and the BSP and so Sensex, all those values will get changed every second. So in that much time, so it has to change the data that much frequently. So, but in those cases, it is not possible to store the data for 5 seconds or 10 seconds, but whatever the time is available there, which is 1 second or microsecond, so it is using, so there also we can use this cache service to improve the performance. And also about the social media. Android hailing and dating apps, media streaming apps, session stores, and all these things. So you can make use of this all these things. This as a service. So this can be used. This is like a question. This slide is like a question. So when do developers use, or what kind of approaches that a developer use to reduce the latency? So that one answer will be to use the cache databases, and second one is to improve the CPU utilization. Suppose one core will give you, so normal hardware, our laptop hardware will give you 8 threads, will have eight cores and 8 threads it will have every core. But on the AWS, every core will have a 2 threads. So for a GPU, it will contain 8 threads. So let us assume 2 threads is doing, uh, suppose, so 2 points of work. So 8 threads will do 8 works at a time. So GPU will always increase the performance. So if you put the specialized hardware or multi-core processor, GPUs, accelerators, like DynamoDB accelerator, in those, the second one answer will be like that. And also third one will be data reduction approach, sampling aggregation, which is nothing but the machine learning algorithm. So which means you have to calculate everything uh, before doing the calculation or before taking the responses. In AWS, we have two different types of Elastic caches are available. So one is the Memcached and second one is the Redis database. Which are two are, so these two are open source Elastic cache services only, which are available outside. So those AWS has taken them, and so they are launching them on AWS. So as this is open source, so Redis and Memcached. So what is the difference between Redis and Memcached? So both serve the same purpose, cache purpose, but Redis can also be used as a database here, and Memcached is only used for the cache service. So that is the major difference. And Redis is also gives you more performance when compared with Memcached. So most of our customers are get to use this Redis database only. So these are the different types of benefits that we get when we use the Redis cache database. So we'll get the key value store. So we have already discussed what is the key value store. So whatever we did there in DynamoDB table, so the same thing, same item to be inserted into this table as well. So that it can put all those items. So this mainly can be done only through the programming. So we'll create one Redis Elastic Cache instance there, and now it is not possible to get connected with that one. But we'll create on screen, and we will check what are the fields that it is asking, and we'll check remaining other as well. As other services, this is secure and compliance, and transit is also available and the So one thing we need to remember while we create a Redis database is Redis database is only available or only get connected within the VPC. So which is not available to outside, which means generally, so for RDS there is an option to make it public, to available in a publicly. So that option is available there, but here we don't have that kind of option. So if you want to get connected to this Elastic Cache instance, we need to we need to get into the VPC section, and VPC inside VPC network, we need to create one EC2 instance. So from that, we need so we can get connected to this RDS, get connected to this Redis instance. So for that reason, I'm only creating this Redis instance on screen, but I will not connect to it as of now. So if you click on create form, so Redis, so in the starting you will see two types of options, Redis and Memcached. And if you need the more nodes and cluster mode enabled, you need to choose this option. So if you don't need the cluster mode like that, so you don't need to enable that one. So by default, you will two nodes. So give the name here and version, port number, standard port is 6379. So for non HTTPS, for HTTPS, which is 6380. And choose the least option which is available here. I'll take the T3 micro for low cost. Enable Replicas 2 and multi-daisy I don't need. Subnet group, everyone is the default. If you need encryption and rest and transit, you can select these things. And check the security group whether the 6379 port is opened or not. So if you're trying to connect, check that. You need to get one EC2 instance to get connected from the VPC section. So here I'm launching a default VPC. So if I want to get connected with this, I need to have the default an EC2 instance in the default subnet. So it is created. After getting creation, we will see the primary endpoint here. So basically, to get connected to with this Redis endpoint, Redis database, so we will get this primary endpoint. We have to copy that one, and using the port 6379, we will get connected to this one. And in some cases, unlike RDS, it is not required to have the password for Redis cache service. So if you check here, Redis auth, no. But there is an option to configure the password as well. So in that case, it is very helpful to maintain in terms of security and all. It is very much helpful. So that is the option in this way to create. So stuff is going on is also Elasticsearch and how is it helpful to browsers, or where do we need to use the Elasticsearch mainly. So that we will see quickly in 5 to 10 minutes. We'll end this session. I hope my Elasticsearch screen is available. So basically, this Elasticsearch service is based on an open source software which is called as Apache Lucene. So what is Apache Lucene? So where we are using this Apache Lucene in the sense, so if you think you are not heard about this Apache Lucene software anyway, but I am sure that you have used this Apache Lucene software in your day-to-day life. So you will get a question, oh, where do I use this Apache Lucene software in my day-to-day life? But so I am sure that you are using this Apache Lucene software. Where in the sense, so you do Google search every time in your mobile or laptop every time. So the search behind the Google search, what is the software that Google is using there in the sense, which is nothing but the Apache Lucene software. If you have a requirement like that, So suppose you can check the latency and you can check the performance there. So after clicking on the search button, immediately Google is able to show you so many pages. So it is showing immediately. So there is no latency and there is nothing, and there is microsecond latency is only there. So how it is performing with that much performance in the sense using this Apache Lucene library only. So in the same way, Elasticsearch is also comes with the backend and main core heart of this Elasticsearch is Apache Lucene engine only. So whatever the Google search is using there, and this Elasticsearch is also using the same software under this one. As this Apache Lucene is an open source software, so everyone is using it. You can also use this Apache Lucene software directly without using this Elasticsearch service. But like all other AWS services, if you make use of Elasticsearch, it will come with a managed service. You don't need to create any server. You don't need to maintain OS installations, package, and patching, software installation, security, compliance. So nothing you need to do here. Everything can be done automatically. So by the AWS one. So this is the help that you will get. But so what is the disadvantage that you have with this Elasticsearch? So we cannot say this as a disadvantage. It is only helpful, only accessible in the form of APIs. In the form of APIs, only using the code, you will be able to connect it to this Elasticsearch service. So unless you know you have some knowledge on development part, you cannot use this Elasticsearch. This one you can understand the concept, but if you want to use this one, you need to have some knowledge on APIs, RESTful APIs, and some any of the programming language. I have one screen on one image on my screen. Suppose check here. So basically, it is an Amazon website, Amazon Kindle store, I guess. Here they have searched for Elasticsearch. So they have given the word Elasticsearch. So based on the word Elasticsearch, it is giving these many responses. How these are giving these many responses in the sense, you will get to know how it is dealing it in behind. So how in the sense, in the same way, how NoSQL is handling all the data in the form of JSON structure, here you will, here it also maintains the same kind of structure. So if you take here, inside the JSON, there is a sub JSON for a name. Name, what is the first name and last name? John Smith. Age 26, city, years complete, years employed, interest, guitar and sports. Suppose. So there are 4 different persons which are available out of 100 persons whose age is 26. Suppose I made a query that fetch the items which are having age of 26. So in that case, it will give you the result immediately with the 4 items that which is having. In the same way, age is 26 and city is Palo Alto, something like that. Whatever there are matching items which are available with age 26 and city Palo Alto, it will fetch all the related items. So in the same way, Google is also doing the same thing in the Google search using the Lucene library, using the Apache Lucene. Suppose you are searching a query that who won the World Cup for 2007, like that. So it will take it will divide the sentence into the words first, and it will send those words as a query. Suppose it will divide who won the World Cup. So there is a 3 words is there. It will divide the entire sentence into 3 words, and it will send that as a query to the search, which means those who JSON structures are having or contains the word who and won and champion. So World Cup or something. So whatever the items or whatever the records that which are having those related content, which will fetch you all those things to you. So that is the purpose of this Elasticsearch. So if you make use of Elasticsearch, there is some advantages like all the other services. You'll have the advantages. So in this way, you can put a document inside the Elasticsearch. Document is nothing but the JSON structure. So make Apple inventory equal to 100. They are trying to insert data into the Elasticsearch. So basically that is called as indexing a document. And if you want to fetch that, so that is called as retrieving a document. So export and exget. So this is the endpoint. After creating Elasticsearch, you will get an endpoint like this, and header and JSON. So you will get like this. So and after adding, after adding this content, if you want to retrieve, you need to give this command with the relative host name endpoint. So index type ID 1. So if it select here, make Apple inventory 100. So the source equal to make Apple an inventory. So in this way, you will get to know this one. So these are some different queries which are used to fetch the relative content with math phrase and query strings and common terms. So I hope you understood on a high level. So this is a very big JSON structure. So normally in the production or in the live environments or in the main applications, big applications like Facebook or YouTube, so you will have this much of big JSON structures. You will have a lot more bigger ones. So this is very less for me. So we'll get very much big ones. So if you are having hundreds of attributes, hundreds of key value stores in single JSON structure, in that time it is difficult to fetch the information. So in those cases, this Lucene library, which means Elasticsearch, is used to fetch the data in microseconds of time. So that is a basic outcome. It's in domains. So Elasticsearch. So basically, the Elasticsearch is also called as, there is a combination of one of the services there. So which is called as ELK stack. Maybe you heard about this term, ELK stack, in the sense E stands for Elasticsearch, E stands for Elasticsearch, and L for Logstash, and K for Kibana. So ELK stack is called as like this: Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. So Kibana is nothing but an BI tool. Logstash is used to store the logs related to the Amazon Elasticsearch. Not only Amazon Elasticsearch, what are the Elasticsearch that is available, it used to store the related logs. And Kibana used to present them using the BI tool. Kibana is a BI tool. It will give the output in the charts and using the pie chart and bars, etc. And these are the different kinds of use cases that we have with the Elasticsearch. And so these are about a few concepts here that we have as per our today's agenda. Sorry if I have taken more time than the schedule, but the content have driven me like this. That's it for today. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So, or you can also contact me personally.
No questions.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for the response. I hope it gives you some knowledge. It values this session, adds some value and gives you some more knowledge. This is great to have all onboarded today. Thanks for joining. Thank you all. If you have any doubt, please contact me personally.